What's up? It's Jeff from RetroArcadeGaming.com. That's all one word. And after a bit of a break due to circumstances unforeseen and beyond my control, I am finally back with another edition of Battle of the Ports. In this series, we take a look at a specific classic arcade game and see how well or poorly it's been ported to various home console and computer systems over the years. Up this week, a classic by Namco, Mappy, which was released to the arcades in 1983. There's probably a pretty deep story behind Mappy, but to put it simply, you're a mouse who also happens to be a cop. A gang of cats has stolen goods and hidden them in their mansion. It's your job, not only your job, your duty to recover the stolen goods. The cats, known as Meowkies or Mewkies, depending on the country you're in, will pursue you, as will their leader, Goro, also known as Namco. Goro is a bit less aggressive than the other cats, but moves faster. He will occasionally hide behind stolen items, and if you recover the items while he is hiding behind it, you'll receive 1,000 bonus points. You maneuver between hallways via trampolines, which can only be jumped on 4 times consecutively before they break. You can open doors into cats and stun them. Blue doors have alarms, and the sound wave will trap any cat that it touches. Remove them temporarily from the board and earn you bonus points. The more cats you trap, the bigger the bonus. And trapping Goro, or the leader, automatically doubles the bonus points. The third round, and every 4th round thereafter, is a bonus round, where the goal is to collect all of the balloons before the time expires. It's a fun game. It's pretty simple in concept. One of my favorites. Have a look at the original Mappy arcade game for about 30 seconds or so, and then we'll dive into the ports. Similar to our last game, Pingo, Mappy didn't get a whole lot of love in the United States, at least from a early console perspective. Most of our releases came in the form of Namco compilation collections beginning in the mid-90s or so. Up first, we're going to take a look at the Nintendo Famicom port released by Namco in 1984. Obviously, a Famicom was Nintendo's Japanese release or version of the NES, so this was a Japan-only release. Unlike the original arcade version, which had 6 floors, this one features only 5, but it really doesn't have an impact on the gameplay. It looks like you'd expect Mappy to look, and it sounds pretty good. The music, typical Nintendo, has a little bit of an electronic vibe to it, but overall, this is an excellent port. Mappy for the Nintendo Famicom, released by Namco in 1984. Next, the Microsoft MSX port, which was released in 1984, sorry about that, by Bug Byte Software. Compared to most of the titles we'll look at, this one is pretty primitive. We're down to 4 floors instead of 6 and the color palette is pretty mild. I believe the original MSX was only capable of 16 colors, so that explains the color palette in this just a little bit. The sounds are decent, if not a bit primitive again. On the plus side, it does look and play much like you'd expect Mappy to play. So here's a look at Bug Byte's port of Mappy for the Microsoft MSX, released in 1984. The MSX port, obviously, was a Japan-only release as well. So what we're going to do next is look at a few of the Japanese computer ports, which I'll admit I don't have a lot of enthusiasm for. Not because they're bad ports, they're just systems that I'm not that familiar with, will never own, nor have any desire to own. But for completeness, we'll take a look at a few of them, but certainly not all, and we won't spend a whole lot of time breaking them down. Up first, the Sharp X1 port, released by Dimpa Software in 1984. And this one takes a second to load up. It's computer based, so give it a minute here. And then this one actually sounds pretty good, looks very good. Graphics are just a little bit pixelated, but overall it's a quality port. Here's a look at Mappy for the Sharp X1, released by Dimpa in 1984. Again, a Japan-only computer release. Next, we're going to take a look at the Fujitsu FM-7 port. The Fujitsu FM-7, again a Japanese computer system. This one was released by DEMPA in 1986. This one is a cassette-based game, so it's going to take a while to load up. And for the sake of video length, I'm going to edit out the loading time here post-processing. So bear with me for just a second. So this port sounds pretty good. But graphically it just doesn't really compare with the rest of the ports that we'll look at. Similar to the MSX, it's a bit primitive. Although this one's got a little bit more color. It's still primitive compared to the rest of them. Here's a look at Mappy for the Fujitsu FM-7 home computer, released by DEMPA in 1986. Up next, the NEC PC88 port. Japan only. Released by DEMPA in 1986. This one, once it gets loaded up here, actually sounds pretty good and looks pretty good. Maybe just a bit pixelated. However, it does play a bit too fast. All these emulators for these Japanese computer systems are essentially the same, and there's an option to dial down the CPU cycles from anywhere from full speed to 16 times to 1 time, and this one's dialed down to the lowest setting and still plays too fast. It's not nearly as fast as the next port we're going to look at, but overall it's too fast and it's dialed down as slow as I can get it. Other than that, it looks pretty good and it actually plays pretty good. Here's a look at the NEC PC88 port by DEMPA, released in 1986. Next, we're going to look at completely unplayable port. This one is for the Epoch Super Cassette Vision. And this is unplayable due to the speed issue I just talked about. This was released by Epoch themselves in 1986. And actually it looks pretty good and sounds pretty good, but with no option to dial down the speed any further, it's just unplayable. This is as slow as I can get this game to play. But as you can see, I mean, it's actually a decent looking port. I need about a 0.25x setting to make this one reasonable. Anyway, here's a look at the Epoch Super Cassette Vision port of Mappy, released by Epoch themselves in 1986. Rounding out the Japanese computer releases is the Sharp X68000 port, which was released in 1990. Actually, there are two Mappy ports for the X68000, with the other being released in 1989. I personally think that the 1990 port is the better of the two, so that's the one we're going to look at today. It was ported to the X68000 by, I don't know if this is a company name or extremely intelligent person that ported this game, but the name is Yopino, Y-O-P-I-N-O, and this port actually looks excellent and sounds excellent. There's some minor pixelation around the character's edges, but it's not really a distraction at all. So here's a look at the Yopino Mappy port for the Sharp X68000, released in 1990. The second port was released in 1989 by Key-E-I, if you want to take a look at that. Enjoy. Somehow I got the hiccups here. Mappy received a Game Boy port. You guessed it, Japan only, in 1996 via the Namco Gallery Volume 1 compilation. This compilation includes Mappy, Battle City, Galaga, and a golf game entitled Namco Classic. It actually sounds very good, and for a grayscale title, actually looks pretty good. It's limited to 5 floors instead of 6, and even at that adds a horizontal scroll, so it scrolls up and down. And I think you know my opinion on scrolling if you've watched any of my previous videos. Not a real big fan of it. Don't really care for it too much in this port. But overall, this is a pretty good port for the Game Boy. As a bonus, if you had the Super Game Boy add-on, you could play this cart on your Super Nintendo and inject a bit of color. So here's a look at the Mappy port for the Game Boy featured in the Namco Gallery Volume 1 compilation CD. Not CD, cart. Up next, a port of a port. The Game Boy Advance port is simply a port of the Famicom game and is part of a 30-title Famicom miniseries that was released for the Game Boy Advance. This was release number 8, Japan only release again, but it's still worth taking a look at. Like I said, this is a port of the Famicom port for the Game Boy Advance. Enjoy. Finally, a couple of titles that we in the States could actually purchase. Up first, the Namco Museum 50th Anniversary compilation, which was released in 2006 and available on the PlayStation 2, the GameCube, the Dreamcast, the Xbox, and the PC. This one actually uses the arcade ROMs, so it's a spot-on recreation of the original arcade game. It features Pac-Man, Miss Pac-Man, Galaga, Galaxian, Bosconian, Rally X, a few other titles, Pole Position. But it does use the actual ROMs, so it's a spot-on recreation. Here's a look at Mappy on the PlayStation 2 via the Namco 50th Anniversary compilation. And just for kicks, and because we're actually lacking in US releases, let's go ahead and take a look at that same 50th anniversary compilation on the GameCube. And actually, there really is no difference between the two. The starting tune's a little bit different. You got the Romantics on this one, I think. But the the same title for two different systems, and we're just looking at it because we don't have a whole lot of options here in the US. So here is Mappy, the 50th anniversary compilation for the GameCube. Enjoy. And last, but certainly not least, the Nintendo DS port, released in 2007. This was available on the Namco Museum DS compilation. Again, using the actual arcade ROMs, it is a spot-on recreation of the original arcade game. This one features, looks like, I don't know if that's Galaga or Galaxian, Xevious, Dig Dug 2, Pac-Man, Galaga, Tower of Druaga, and Mappy. So here's a look at Mappy for the Nintendo DS via the Namco Museum DS compilation. And with that, we've about covered most of the Mappy ports. I left out a few, mostly Japanese computer ports, noticeably the NEC PC 6001, the Sharp MZ PC family, and the Sword M5 PC lineup. While I like to be complete, I don't have much interest in having every PC known to man emulated on my system, and especially a bunch of Japanese computer systems that I didn't even really know existed until I got into emulation. I got a pretty simple theory. If I can't easily find a scan of the game's box art and some basic information about who released the title and when, I'm not interested in it. Rants aside, all of the ports we looked at today are passable ports. Most of them are pretty darn decent. In the US, your options are limited, short of picking up a Japanese import. You can grab the Jax Pacific plug-and-play Miss Pac-Man unit, which includes Mappy, or pick up one of the compilation ports for the GameCube, PS2, Xbox, Dreamcast, PC, or Nintendo DS. They all emulate the original arcade game spot on. Heck, scour Craigslist, Letgo, Facebook Marketplace for an original Mappy arcade cabinet near you. There's not a whole lot of deals out there anymore. Few and far between, but maybe you'll be lucky enough to stumble upon one. So here it is, late at night, and I just got done processing my video and I realized that I forgot to include a port. There was a port for the Sega Game Gear that was released in 1991 by Namco themselves. I didn't want to disclude it, so we're just going to kind of tack it on here to the end of the video. So take a look at the Game Gear port of Mappy, again released in 1991 by Namco. So the Game Gear port looks an awful lot like the Famicom port. Don't know if it's an exact port of that one or not, but it looks pretty similar. And with that, we are done with our look at Mappy ports for the various systems. We'll see you next time. Until then, happy gaming. Peace.